Most people assume strength is demonstrated by how effectively they can influence, correct, or dominate others. They measure power by how many people listen to them, obey them, or adjust their behaviour to satisfy their expectations. But that belief is deeply flawed. The highest form of mastery is not external, it is internal. It is not about controlling environments, conversations, or people. It is about governing your own mind, your emotions, and your responses. You can command a room and still be a prisoner to irritation. You can influence thousands and still be shaken by a single negative comment. That is not power. That is dependency disguised as authority. Real power begins the moment you no longer require others to behave a certain way for you to remain at peace. The reality is simple. You will never control everyone. People will misunderstand you, disagree with you, disrespect you, and sometimes even provoke you intentionally. If your emotional state is tied to their behaviour, then your life will always remain unstable. You will constantly rise and fall based on who said what, who did what, and who failed to meet your expectations. That is not living, that is reacting. Self-mastery demands a shift in perspective. Instead of asking, how do I make them change? You begin asking, how do I remain steady in the face of this? That question alone separates the emotionally immature from the emotionally powerful. Because when you focus on mastering yourself, you reclaim authority over your inner world. Your emotions are signals, not commands. They are indicators of what is happening within you, but they should never dictate your actions. Anger may rise, frustration may knock at your door, irritation may attempt to take hold. But none of these feelings have the right to control your behaviour unless you surrender to them. The disciplined person understands this clearly. They feel everything, but they are not ruled by anything. They have trained themselves to pause in moments where others would react instantly. And within that pause lies their power. Because when you pause, you create space between stimulus and response. And in that space, you get to choose who you will become in that moment. Many people skip that space entirely. They react immediately, speak carelessly, and act impulsively. Later, they regret their words, their tone, and their decisions. But by then, the damage has already been done. Self-mastery teaches you to value that moment of pause more than the temporary satisfaction of reacting emotionally. You must also recognize that trying to control others is often rooted in insecurity. When you feel the need to correct every behavior, challenge every opinion, or respond to every offense, it reveals an internal instability. But when you are grounded, when you are secure in who you are, you no longer feel threatened by every external action. You no longer feel the need to prove yourself in every situation. There is a calm confidence in the person who has mastered themselves. They do not rush to respond. They do not become easily offended. They do not allow others to pull them into unnecessary conflicts. Not because they are passive, but because they are intentional. Self-mastery also requires emotional responsibility. You must stop blaming others for how you feel. No one can make you angry without your permission. They can trigger something within you, yes, but the reaction is still yours. And once you accept that responsibility, you gain the ability to change it. This is where true freedom begins. When you no longer depend on others to act right for you to feel right, you become emotionally independent. Your peace is no longer fragile. It is no longer conditional. It becomes a constant, something you carry within yourself regardless of external circumstances. Understand this clearly. The world does not reward those who react impulsively. It rewards those who remain steady. In every environment, whether personal or professional, the person who maintains composure has the advantage. They think more clearly, decide more wisely, and lead more effectively. So instead of investing your energy into controlling people, invest it into refining yourself. Strengthen your patience, sharpen your awareness, deepen your understanding. Because when you truly master yourself, you realize something powerful. You no longer need to control anyone else. Most people believe that offense is something that happens to them automatically, as if it is an unavoidable reaction wired into their nature. But that belief is not only inaccurate, it is dangerous. Because the moment you think offense is automatic, you surrender your power to everyone around you. You begin to live at the mercy of other people's words, attitudes, and behaviors. And that is not strength. That is emotional dependency. The truth is, offense is always presented, but it is never imposed. It is an invitation, not a command. Someone may speak harshly to you, disrespect you, misunderstand you, or even try to provoke you, but none of those actions have the authority to control your internal state unless you grant them access. And that access is given through your agreement to be offended. Think about this carefully. Two people can experience the same situation, hear the same words, and face the same insult. Yet one walks away unbothered, while the other carries anger for hours, days, or even years. The difference is not in what was said or done. The difference is in the decision each person made internally. One chose to absorb it, while the other chose to release it. This means your emotional response is not controlled by external events, but by internal interpretation. What you tell yourself about what happened determines how you feel about it. If you interpret someone's behavior as a personal attack, you will feel offended. But if you interpret it as a reflection of their own limitations, their own immaturity, or their lack of awareness, the emotional weight begins to disappear. You must come to a place where you refuse to internalize everything that is external. Not every comment deserves your attention. Not every opinion deserves your energy. Not every action deserves your reaction. Wisdom is knowing what to ignore. When you understand that offense is optional, you begin to operate from a position of control. You are no longer reacting instinctively. You are choosing deliberately. And this is where true emotional freedom begins. Because if you can choose not to be offended, then no one can manipulate your emotions. No one can push your buttons because you have removed the mechanism they rely on. It also requires humility and maturity to reach this level. Because sometimes the reason we get offended is not because of what was said, but because it touched something unresolved within us. Offense often reveals areas where we are insecure, defensive, or seeking validation. And instead of blaming others for triggering those feelings, a wise person uses those moments as opportunities for self-examination. Ask yourself, why did that bother me? Why did those words affect me so deeply? Is it truly about them, or is it about something within me that still needs growth? When you begin asking these questions, you shift from being a victim of your emotions to becoming a student of your own behavior. Another powerful truth is this: when you choose offense, you carry a burden that the other person may not even be aware of. They move on. They continue living their life while you hold on to anger, replay conversations, and drain your own energy. In that sense, offense punishes you more than it affects them. So why carry what was never yours to begin with? You have the ability to filter what enters your spirit. You can hear something and decide it has no place within you. You can witness behavior and choose not to absorb it. This does not mean you accept disrespect or tolerate harmful actions. It means you respond with clarity instead of reacting emotionally. When you stop accepting offense, you become difficult to disturb. People may try to provoke you, but they will find no reaction to feed on. They may attempt to pull you into conflict, but you remain grounded. And over time, this consistency builds a reputation not of weakness, but of unshakable strength. Because the person who cannot be easily offended cannot be easily controlled. And when you reach that level, you begin to experience a different kind of life, one where your peace is not dependent on others. Your emotions are not dictated by circumstances, and your energy is preserved for what truly matters. This is not about ignoring reality, it is about mastering it. It is about understanding that you always have a choice in how you respond, and choosing in a way that protects your peace, your clarity, and your purpose. Emotional discipline is one of the most misunderstood strengths a person can develop, because many people confuse it with suppression. They believe that to be emotionally disciplined means to ignore feelings, bury reactions, or pretend nothing affects them. But true emotional discipline is not denial. It is awareness combined with control. It is the ability to fully acknowledge what you feel without allowing those feelings to dictate your behavior. A disciplined person does not deny anger. They simply refuse to let anger make decisions for them. They do not deny sadness. They simply refuse to let sadness define their identity. They experience emotions honestly, but they process them wisely. Most people either explode emotionally or suppress everything until it eventually breaks them internally. Emotional discipline stands between those extremes. It teaches you how to remain balanced. It teaches you how to observe your emotions without immediately acting on them. This is important because emotions are temporary, but the consequences of emotional reactions can become permanent. One uncontrolled moment can damage relationships, opportunities, reputations, and years of progress. That is why emotional discipline is not weakness, it is protection. A person without emotional discipline becomes predictable. Their buttons are easy to push, their reactions are easy to trigger, and because of that, they are easily manipulated. But a person who has mastered emotional discipline becomes difficult to control because they do not react automatically. They pause, they evaluate, they choose carefully. That ability creates stability not only within themselves, but also in every environment they enter. People naturally trust those who remain calm under pressure because calmness signals strength, awareness, and control. You must also understand that emotional discipline is built through practice, not intention alone. In difficult moments, your habits reveal your level of mastery. Anyone can appear calm when life is comfortable, but real discipline is revealed when you are criticized, disrespected, ignored, or challenged. Those moments expose whether you are ruled by emotion or guided by principle. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to train yourself. Every frustrating interaction becomes a test of your composure. And every moment of restraint strengthens your character. Over time, emotional discipline changes the way you experience life. You stop wasting energy on unnecessary conflict. You stop carrying emotional burdens that do not belong to you. You stop reacting to every opinion, every insult, and every misunderstanding. Instead, you become more focused, more peaceful, and more intentional. You begin protecting your energy instead of constantly giving it away to people who have not earned access to your inner world. That is real maturity. That is real self-control. And ultimately, that is real power. But that is not discipline. That is avoidance. And avoidance always comes with consequences. True emotional discipline is not about denying what you feel. It is about understanding it, managing it wisely, and choosing how it is expressed. Every emotion you experience carries energy. Anger, frustration, irritation. These emotions are not inherently wrong. They are signals. They are internal messages alerting you to something that requires attention. However, the issue is not the emotion itself. The issue is what you choose to do with it. Undisciplined emotions demand immediate expression. Disciplined emotions move through a process of evaluation before they are released. When you lack emotional discipline, you become reactive. Reaction is automatic. It is quick, unfiltered, and often regrettable. It hands control of your behaviour to the situation or the person standing in front of you. But when you are emotionally disciplined, you shift from reaction to response. A response is intentional. It is measured. It is guided by principles rather than impulses. There is always a space between what happens to you and how you respond to it. Most people never develop the awareness to recognize that space, so they live as though their reactions are unavoidable. But that space is where your power exists. Emotional discipline is the ability to expand that space, to pause, to think clearly, and to choose wisely instead of reacting blindly. Consider how often people say things they later regret, simply because they allowed a moment of anger to control them. Words spoken in emotional haste cannot be taken back. Actions driven by uncontrolled feelings often create consequences that last much longer than the emotion itself. Emotional discipline protects you from becoming a prisoner of temporary emotions that can create permanent damage. It also gives you clarity. When emotions become intense, judgment becomes clouded. You begin interpreting situations through the lens of intensity rather than truth. You assume intentions, you exaggerate problems, and you make decisions that are not aligned with your long-term goals. But when you are emotionally disciplined, you create enough distance from the situation to see it accurately. You respond based on reality, not just perception. Another important aspect of emotional discipline is self-awareness. You must know your triggers. You must understand what disturbs your peace and why. Many people are controlled by patterns they have never examined. They react the same way in different situations with different people because they have never taken the time to study themselves. Emotional discipline requires you to become a student of your own behavior. Once you become aware, you can begin retraining your responses. You can decide in advance how you will handle certain situations. Instead of waiting to become overwhelmed, you prepare yourself mentally. You establish internal standards for how you will behave regardless of what others do. This is how you reclaim control of your emotional life. It is also important to understand that emotional discipline is not developed overnight. It is built through consistent practice. Every situation that challenges you becomes an opportunity to strengthen it. Each time you choose calm over anger, patience over irritation, and understanding over offense, you reinforce a new way of living. And over time, something powerful begins to happen. You become less affected by external circumstances. Situations that once disturbed you lose their intensity. People who once provoked you no longer have that power. Not because they have changed, but because you have. This is where true freedom begins. When your emotions are no longer controlled by others, you are no longer easily manipulated. You become stable, grounded, and secure within yourself. You are able to maintain your peace in environments that would normally create chaos. Emotional discipline, therefore, is not a limitation. It is a form of liberation. It frees you from the need to react, from the burden of regret, and from the control of external influences. It allows you to operate from a place of strength, wisdom, and intention. And the more you develop it, the more you realize that the goal is not to feel less, but to feel without losing control. Not to eliminate emotions, but to master them. Because when you master your emotions, you ultimately master your life. Your peace is not something that comes from outside circumstances. It is something you generate, protect, and maintain from within. Most people are waiting for the world to become calm before they decide to become calm themselves. That is a losing strategy. If your peace depends on people behaving the way you expect, then your peace will always remain unstable because people are unpredictable. But when you understand that your peace is your responsibility, everything changes. You stop negotiating your emotional state with others and begin governing it from within. Every time you say, "They made me angry," or "They ruined my mood," you are unknowingly giving away your authority. No one has that kind of power unless you hand it to them willingly. What people do is present a stimulus, but your reaction is still your decision. Between what happens to you and how you respond, there is a space. And in that space lies your power. If you do not take control of that space, your emotions will always remain at the mercy of external forces. You must train yourself to pause. Not every action deserves a reaction, and not every comment deserves your energy. The ability to remain unbothered is not a sign that you are ignoring reality. It is a sign that you have mastered your internal world. When you pause, you give yourself time to evaluate. Is this worth my peace? Is this situation important enough for me to lose my composure? Most of the time, the answer is no. But people react anyway because they have not developed emotional discipline. Protecting your peace requires intentional boundaries, not only with others, but also with your own thoughts. Sometimes it is not even people disturbing you. It is the way you replay situations repeatedly in your mind. You revisit conversations, imagine arguments, and create emotional reactions long after the moment has already passed. That is self-inflicted disturbance. A disciplined mind knows how to let things go. It understands that holding on to negativity does not punish the other person. It only drains you. You must also accept that you cannot control how people treat you, but you can control what you tolerate and how you interpret it. When someone disrespects you, it reveals something about their character, not your worth. When someone misunderstands you, it reflects their perception, not your identity. Once you truly internalize this, you stop taking everything personally. And when you stop taking things personally, you stop giving situations the power to disturb you. Peace is maintained through perspective. When you begin seeing life from a higher level of understanding, small things lose their ability to affect you. What once triggered you now seems insignificant. What once angered you now becomes something you can easily overlook. This is growth. It is not that situations have changed, it is that you have changed. There is also strength in silence. You do not need to respond to everything in order to prove a point. Many battles are won simply by refusing to engage. When you argue with negativity, you give it energy. When you remain silent, you deny it influence. Silence is not weakness, it is controlled power. It is the decision to rise above unnecessary conflict instead of feeding it. Taking responsibility for your peace also means choosing your environment wisely. If you constantly surround yourself with chaos, negativity, and drama, maintaining peace will become extremely difficult. But when you intentionally place yourself in environments that promote clarity, growth, and stability, protecting your peace becomes natural. You are not meant to endure constant disturbance. You are meant to cultivate stability. At the highest level, peace becomes a lifestyle, not a reaction. It is no longer something you struggle to maintain. It becomes your default state. You walk into situations already grounded. You face challenges already centered. And because of that, nothing easily moves you. When you truly understand that your peace is your responsibility, you stop blaming others for how you feel. You stop expecting the world to adjust itself for your comfort. Instead, you rise to a level where your inner stability becomes independent of external conditions. And that is where real freedom begins. When your peace is no longer something that can be taken, but something firmly established within you. People do not act randomly. They act from what they know, what they have experienced, and what they have become. Every word they speak and every action they take is a reflection of their internal world. When someone disrespects you, misunderstands you, or behaves in a way that seems irrational, it is easy to assume that their behavior is about you. But in reality, it is often a revelation of their level of awareness, not a definition of your worth. A person who is constantly angry will often project anger onto others. A person filled with insecurity will often criticize or judge people around them. Someone who lacks emotional maturity may respond with disrespect, manipulation, or hostility because that is the only way they know how to cope internally. Understanding this changes the way you interpret human behavior. Instead of absorbing every negative action personally, you begin to recognize that people reveal themselves through how they treat others. Their behavior becomes information, not an identity you attach to yourself. This does not mean you excuse harmful behavior or tolerate mistreatment. It means you stop internalizing it. You stop allowing another person's unresolved issues to become emotional burdens that you carry within yourself. Emotionally mature people understand that not every negative interaction deserves emotional investment. Sometimes the wisest response is observation, not reaction. The moment you stop taking everything personally, you reclaim emotional freedom. You no longer feel emotionally wounded by every opinion, every misunderstanding, or every criticism. Instead, you develop the ability to remain grounded in who you are, regardless of how others behave around you. A person who has never learned emotional control will often express frustration through anger. A person who has been hurt deeply but never healed may project that pain onto others around them. Someone who lacks understanding will frequently misinterpret intentions, react too quickly, and create conflict where none was ever intended. When you begin to see this clearly, you stop personalizing behavior that was never truly personal in the first place. This perspective changes everything. Instead of reacting with anger, you begin responding with understanding. Not because you excuse poor behavior, but because you recognize its source. You understand that expecting maturity from someone who has not developed it is like expecting clarity from someone standing in darkness. They are not withholding it from you intentionally, they simply do not possess it yet. This realization protects your peace, because once you understand that people can only give what they have, you stop demanding from them what they are incapable of providing. You no longer expect deep respect from someone who has never learned to respect themselves. You stop searching for calm communication from someone who has never practiced self-control. And by doing so, you free yourself from constant disappointment. It also changes the way you respond. Instead of becoming offended, you become observant. Instead of escalating situations emotionally, you create space. You realize that reacting emotionally to someone's limitations only pulls you down to the same level of confusion they are operating from. But maintaining your composure elevates you above the situation.